Happy Tuesday, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of the Good Old Podcast. I'm Jacquie Franciulli for Wahoo's 24/7, and it's almost here. We're not just talking about football anymore. College football is making its return. Virginia football will play Richmond in the opener, and we're just a week away. So, how do we get going for football season? Well, we talk about each position and we break down the main talking points of the offense, defense, and special teams heading into the season. But I need some help this week. So we're going to bring in Daily Progress's Greg Madia and CBS 19's Preston Willett. Thank you so much, guys, for joining us this week.
Happy to do
it. I know, it's so exciting. You just want to get right into it. I know it. So UVA has been pretty open with us with fall camp. We've seen a lot of practices, and we're going to start with the offense on this week's episode. One of the main talking points, you guys know, you probably get asked this a lot, is will the O-line be good enough to protect Brennan Armstrong? So the way we're going to do this is we're going to buy or sell. This is going to be our segment. So we're going to start off with Greg. Greg, do you buy or sell that the O-line is going to be able to protect Brennan Armstrong and help UVA create a run game?
Yeah, I'm buying it. I think we heard from Tony Elliott that the mentality has started to change for that group, especially with the running game, that you're starting to see them go downhill a little bit more and gain some confidence. And just in some conversations with different offensive linemen throughout the preseason, they're excited about the change and being able to push forward a little more frequently than in the past. And I know they haven't had the chance to maybe get five in there as regularly as they'd like to, right? Some guys in and out of training camp, different ailments and illnesses, injuries, whatever. So they haven't had a consistent group of five practice. But I think they've found some players that they really trust within the offensive line unit, right? Ty Furnish at center, John Paul Flores at whatever position they decide best suits him. So to me, I think they've found some pieces there, and it's something that's going to have to get better as the season goes along. But I think with Armstrong's experience and his ability and know-how of also when to get the ball out, how quickly to get the ball out, that it'll work for that group.
Yeah, and if you're watching us on YouTube, you get to see actually the O-line doing some work during the practices that were open to the media. Preston, do you agree with Greg?
Yeah, I'm going to agree with Greg. I'm going to buy this as well. And Greg talked about it right there with Armstrong's experience. How much time do you really need back there for them to be successful? And like he said, I mean, this is not it's an inexperienced group, but it's a group with a lot of talent. You look at guys like Noah Josie and Logan Taylor. Those are guys that came in as pretty respected prospects. And then also Derek Devine is a guy that would have gotten more playing time if he had been healthy the past couple of years. And Coach Tujay, I mean, like coaches have said over and over again, he's done this before. He's gotten the best out of this group before. So I think this is a group with a lot of potential. And Jonathan Leach, obviously, I think is going to be kind of the key to that at one of the tackle spots, probably the right tackle spot. But I mean, he's battling an injury of his own, as we heard yesterday with he's got a cast on his arm. So it might be a couple weeks. He might be back for the Richmond game, might take another week after that. But I think there's a lot of talent on this offensive line. It's just, like they said over and over again, I think Des Kitching said he's like a broken record. They just got to get five guys out there on back-to-back days doing this. And I think between now and that game one against Richmond, they're going to have a little bit of time to maybe develop some of that chemistry.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you both how I think I'm going to buy this. I think the O-line storyline, although I understand why it was blown up so much heading into the season, I think is a little bit overblown because, one, we've known history of Coach Tujay, and also because a lot of these guys did have experience just being with Coach Tujay and practicing at a college level. So I always thought that could help. And then just knowing that they've cemented that center position, at least, that's been the most consistent. So you've been able to have a chemistry between Brennan and Ty Furnish. That's also a help out because that's the biggest communication that you need. You need to have some sort of chemistry with your guy in center. And also because I'm confident that UVA can play call around the O-line for the first couple of games. Because if you look at this schedule just says, let's get the O-line gelling for the first couple of games. This is a perfect schedule for that, especially where the hardest ones in the second half of the season. And I still remember when Dan Mullen took over the Florida Gators and he had a really weak offensive line and he faced one of the best defensive line in the SEC, the Mississippi State DL at Mississippi State. What he did was he did those rollout passes, he did those screens, those sweeps, and we saw them practicing that during fall camp. So I could see Billy Kemp coming in, Keaton Thompson with those short passes. And I think that's going to be the big difference. I know a lot of people have been talking about, they mentioned balanced offense is going to be, 50% running, 50% passing. But in my mind, that means not just flinging the ball down, try to get a quick drive. It's about having long, sustained drives, those short passes out wide. And I think that's going to help the O-line as well, kind of take out a little bit of that weakness. So in my mind, I think that's going to be the thing with the O-line. So I know that was one of the biggest talking points on the offense going into the season. So after the break, though, we're going to talk about the other big talking point, the running backs. So in just a few seconds, we'll be back and talk about the run game at Virginia. Welcome back to the Good Old Podcast. I'm Jacquie Franciulli for Wahoo's 24/7. And obviously, I am joined by Greg Madia from Daily Progress and Preston Willett from CBS 19. And we just got done talking about the offensive line in Virginia. And one of the key things we're watching the O-line for is for the running game. Everyone wants a running game at Virginia. I think that is the second biggest question I ask. Can we run the ball? We miss running the ball. And when you look at this running back room, there is some talent. But I've got to say, I've been around college football a while, and my goodness, they are challenging Mike Collins at every single moment. I've never seen a staff just gung-ho, and I think still Coach Keith Gator has probably one of the best quotes I've seen at practice, where he yelled at Mike Collins after having a one-handed catch, telling him, God made two hands, use them. So that's how much the level of coaching they've been doing with Mike. Preston, we're going to start with you. Buy or sell? Are they going to have a consistent run game, and will they have a consistent ball carrier?
Buying a consistent run game, a consistent ball carrier, not so much, because it really seems like this is going to be a by committee approach. And that's something that they've talked about since before camp, when they're hyping up Mike Collins, who was coming off a great summer. Like you said, they've been challenging Mike Collins like no player I've seen at UVA in the past couple of years. And really, Keith Gaither said this before the season, there's really no running back room that's going to get the kind of coaching that this UVA running back's getting between Keith Gaither, Des Kitchings, who has been a longtime running back coach, just coached running backs in the NFL, Tony Elliott, who was a running back coach first at Clemson. So really, they're getting a lot of coaching from all these guys at UVA. And I think, you're going to see a lot of Paris Jones, who they say has been kind of the lead guy in that running back group so far. Mike Hollins, Ronnie Walker, once he gets back, he's back at practice now. So hopefully he'll be able to get back in a couple of weeks now. And then also, they really like Xavier Brown, the freshman out of Kentucky. They said that he's shown a lot in camp so far. So they're going to have a lot of options in that run game. But the other interesting thing that Des Kitchings said yesterday is run game is not just hand the ball off to the ball carrier in the backfield. How they're doing the numbers and how they're going to have their internal stats is those short pass plays that we talked before about with the offensive line, getting the ball out to a Billy Kemp or a Keaton Thompson out in space, those little swing passes. That's part of the run game too.
Greg, do you kind of agree with, Preston, that there's going to be a run game, but maybe not one ball carrier per se?
Yeah, I think they're going to be committed to the run. So they're definitely going to go with it, right? That's what Elliott has said since he got to UVA this past winter. So I doubt they stray from that. As far as a lead running back, I think they would love to have one. I think that would be the preference, is that they have one guy. I don't think it's happened to this point where they trust one guy that much. But if you're going to take a bet on somebody, I think it might have to be Paris Jones, right? He's proven everybody wrong at this point. The former walk-on, he was a defensive back last year out of necessity. Talking to Keith Gaither a little bit, he said, that when he got there, Jones was listed as a corner on the roster, and he's thinking, how is it possible that this kid, has become the team's starting running back, right? He's going to probably start week one against Richmond at the position. So you're talking about a kid who only has 3 career carries, more years in a UVA uniform, and he just keeps proving people wrong. So maybe maybe it's a guy you don't expect in Paris Jones, who's really had a nice camp. And I think the one thing that's interesting about Jones, like maybe lost with all the storylines about his work ethic and his relentlessness there, is just how well his skill set fits the offense, right? It's a little bit different than everybody else. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. I think he had told me that his dad had played receiver, so he grew up like learning the route tree, learning how to run routes, learning how to catch passes out of the backfield, even though he wanted to play running back. So there are some skill set things that has helped Paris Jones to this point. He's also, according to Kitchings, the one running back who's really been willing to stick his nose in there and pass protect as a blocker. So I think that's important to realize too. And that's why you're seeing so much of him with the first team during practice. So if there's one guy, until somebody else shows it, right, how could you go against Paris Jones?
Yeah, and I kind of agree with both of you in a way. I'm going to buy that they're going to try for a run game. I'm just not so convinced that they're going to force it. It's just something that Coach Kitchings has said. They're like, we're just going to try to score points. So I think that's something that, I asked him is if something's not working, are you just going to try to push it, or just saying, like, for example, you're not getting as much production from your running backs. Like, he's willing to kind of compromise and say, for example, Keaton Thompson, move him and have him incorporated in the run game. But it's funny to me how you both don't mention Ronnie Walker. He was the guy that was, kind of leading the way before his injury. And now he seems to be ahead of the game. Actually, we're seeing him right now on the video. He's coming up here. He's now participating more in practices. He shouldn't be ready for the Richmond game, but they think he's going to be ready by late September or even earlier. So I think he's the one that I'm going to be watching out for once he comes back and he's fully conditioned, because he was doing so well prior to his injury. So I think him and Paris Jones could be that 1-2 punch that UVA might need during the season, not just one ball carrier, but I think those two have contrasting strengths and skill set that I think can really complement each other for Virginia's offense. And this kind of goes to, I kind of sneaked in Keaton Thompson here. I know he's been working out with the wide receivers a lot, and you can tell that that's something that he's really, really focused on the last few weeks here in fall camp and even at the spring. You see him really work with Coach Higgins, Coach Elliott one-on-one, and even Billy Kemp. You see them working together on the side a lot. He's really relying on the veteran Billy to really help him in his skill set. But do you think that eventually you're going to see him work into the other positions that he's worked at quarterback, he's worked at running back? Do you feel like Keaton's going to be that Mr. Football, maybe Mr. Trick Bag again? They're going to kind of open up the playbook a little bit. I'm going to buy that. I think they're going to use Keaton in a variety of ways, not just at wide receiver. I think they've been quiet about that during fall camp, but I think the playbook's going to open up for him. What do you think, Preston?
Yeah, no, I would buy that too. Maybe not to the extent that we saw under Bronco Mendenhall, because talking to Keaton Thompson, he's doing a lot less in fall camp right now. He doesn't have to meet with, the quarterback coach and then go meet with Higgins in the wide receiver room and then go talk to the running back coach. Like, he's focusing at wide receiver right now, but you can even see in practice, and the time that we get to see out there is that, they're bringing him over to try some, some toss plays or, some wide receiver handoffs or something like that, just to get him involved in the run game. Maybe there is some room for some direct snaps, because I think Keaton, when you got him the ball directly last year, he was able to make some plays, because it's so hard to take him down. He does not go down after the first, second, or even third hit most times. And then look at Des Kitchings' background. He just came from the Atlanta Falcons last year, where they had Cordero Patterson, who's been a wide receiver for the majority of his career and then had a breakout year at running back. So he likes to use guys in different positions. I think they want to focus him at wide receiver right now, because that's mainly where he's going to be used. But Keaton's trick bag for a reason, and he's got some tricks in his bag.
So do you think, Greg, he'll be Mr. Trick Bag?
I'm selling this. I think he's going to be more of a receiver this year. I think the trick plays are there. If they want to use him in a gadget type role, they can if they need to, right? If the running back position isn't working out and they need to spark it a little bit, maybe they can put Keaton Thompson back there, because Kitchings has it in his back pocket, having seen it with Patterson down in Atlanta last year. But to me, he's been focusing so much on receiver, and I feel like they think they have enough at running back at this point, right? With Jones, with Walker on the mend, with Hollins, who they hope can get better and finally, put some things together in practice. I think they feel like they have enough talent at running back where they might not have to use Thompson And then I think Thompson is increasing his special teams workload too. Like at what point is it too much, right? At what point are you overloading him too much, especially with his hopes and NFL future, right? He wants to show everybody he can be a great receiver. I'm selling this. I don't think you're going to see as much of the gadgety stuff with Keaton as last season.
And kind of to end our offensive preview here before we finish the episode on special teams. Last year, obviously, was a record-breaking season for this offense. Brennan Armstrong almost was, I think, had the ACC record. If it wasn't for the fact that didn't play the bowl game, he might have broken that ACC passing record. Do you feel like this is a season that we can see those numbers again? I personally am selling this because again, we talked about this going to be a more balanced offense. I think they're going to be able to score and maybe do some high-scoring games, but I just don't think it will be a record-breaking offense just because of what we're talking about. They're talking about sustaining drives, not those like kind of quick fire drives. What is your opinion? We'll start with you, Greg, this time.
Yeah, I think I'll sell that also. I think there's some game management aspect to this too, right? If you're trying to improve that defense, one way to help it out is to slow things down, right? With that air raid offense last year, that system is prone to the 3 and out because you had 3 quick pass throws and it didn't work out. Then your defense is right back on the field. One way to help the defense, run the ball a little more. And that's where I think the balance comes in and the commitment of the run game comes in. Going back to when we were talking about that, it just makes sense, right? You take a little bit pressure off Armstrong. You take a little bit pressure off that offensive line by running the football. You also alleviate some of the responsibilities of the defense by having them on the field less. So to me, I think that's why you got to sell it is, you're changing the philosophy and the way in which the program operates offensively, defensively, and kind of how things are supposed to work in unison. So I think that's why you got to sell this.
Yeah, I would also sell maybe the per game numbers aren't going to look the same, but also remember if they do play in a bowl game and he is healthy the entire year, just the numbers are going to look better just that way as his total. But also, this is a really strong point to watch out for is with this run game and with more of an emphasis on the run game. If they can get defenses to respect that, think how much is going to be open for him off the play action this year. And that's something that Armstrong's never really had because he can fake it to the running back all he wants the past couple of years. But every defensive coordinator in the country knows Robert and I is not going to run the ball. So now actually having that as a weapon and being able to hit maybe a Wicks over the top off those play action plays, I think it's going to be something that to watch. And maybe, the per game numbers don't look, but I think he can still hit some really high numbers with this offense. Maybe even, more touchdowns. I don't know.
So no passes to offensive linemen, or is this too soon?
I'm going to sell on the offensive line passes. Mainly because Bobby Haskins is gone.
So the offensive line is enough to worry about, right? I mean, you don't
Fair.
want to throw.
Fair. Maybe we'll see that at Syracuse, though. Maybe that'll be in the playbook. Maybe that'll be the playbook. All right, guys. We're gonna take a little quick break here, then we're gonna talk some special teams. So we'll be back. Welcome back to the Good Old Podcast. I'm Jacquie Franciulli. We have Greg Madia and Preston Willett join us for this episode. And it's a unit that we hardly talk about, special teams. But as we know, special teams can be pivotal in some games. They can lose you games, but they could also win you games. Remember Louisville. Remember Miami. Obviously, it can be close sometimes. Miami has nightmares about goalposts. So when you look at the special teams, it looks like the kicking game. I feel like the kicking game has at least some depth in there. That's something that UVA has struggled to have depth. What I wanted to talk about is a return game. That's something that last year we didn't hardly see. We saw a lot of fair catches, and we didn't see them kind of attack the return game. Talking to Coach Gaither, he doesn't seem very content right now with his return game. He's really happy with Billy Kemp. That's your punt returner. But even Demick Starling's on kickoff return, he's saying he would play right now, but I'm not happy. So do you buy or sell that Virginia will have a prolific return game? Preston, we'll start with you.
I'm going to sell that unless Joe Reed's walking back through the door. I mean, I think UVA fans don't realize how spoiled they were with Joe Reed and what he could do in the return game. He's one of the best returners in college football history. But yeah, looking right now, I don't see a lot of explosion in the return game. I think Starling has incredible speed, but it's more than just speed on these kickoff returns, and it just hasn't been something that has been part of the culture the past couple of years. I feel like last year, even with Billy Kemp, I think he was a sure hand at punt return, but nothing explosive off the punt return. So I think honestly, the past couple of years, the way Bronco was talking about it, it was just catch the ball, don't fumble it, don't muff the punt. That's really, I think, all Virginia fans should hope for. Maybe take a touchback, because look, you just want to get the ball into this offense's hands. And so right now, I mean, between Starling, between Devin Chandler, Billy Kemp, whoever they put back there, I'm not seeing a lot of explosive plays out of it. But if you can just be sure-handed and get the offense the ball, I think that's the best thing they can do.
How about you, Greg?
Yeah, I think with the return game and really the major four special teams unit, you got to hope for simple improvement, right? I was looking at it earlier this week. UVA was like 97th or worse nationally in the four big special teams areas: punt return defense, kick return, and kick return defense. I think when you talk about being explosive, how about just be good, right? just be solid, right? I think you need to upgrade, look for an incremental upgrade. And I think there's been some effort in there to make sure it happens with playing top flight personnel on special teams, right? There's been an effort, and Elliott said it too. He'd rather rest guys on offense or defense than rest guys on special teams. So I think you're going to see a lot of Keaton Thompson on special teams, Nick Jackson on special teams. There's risk, of course, when you play starters, offense, defensive starters on special teams, right? Nobody wants to get anybody hurt that way. But I think you're going to see it in an effort to upgrade the special teams. And then maybe as some of the young depth develops, then you can insert some of those younger guys, I should say. And to answer your question, I would sell it right now. I don't think you're going to have that explosion early. But maybe as players get more comfortable in Gaither's and Elliott's special teams philosophies, maybe later in the year.
Yeah, and if you're on YouTube, you're actually watching some special teams drills, and you're seeing a lot of the starters there. Keaton Thompson was one of them that you saw there. Nick Jackson was another one, like you said. There's a lot of starters there, and that has been a priority for them. Obviously, they would like the young guys to kind of take over towards the middle of the season when things start piling up on those bodies, and for health, they don't want to add 25 to 30 snaps a game. But as for right now, starters are going to be contributing. And I agree with you both. I am selling early on in the season. I'm actually really curious at how the first year Xavier Brown will do. I think he's a guy that I would be curious in the return game. And they have put him out there. I think 1 or 2 practices, I saw them back there in a return game for punt. I'm curious to see how once he gets, more transition and more reps and just gets used to the college game. I think he's the one that I'm curious about. And also Devin Chandler. He did that in Wisconsin. He was a returner. And they've been coaching him up a lot on the sidelines. But as of right now, I understand the hesitation. So I'll be selling that. But I really want to thank you both for joining us on this week's episode, breaking down the offense and also breaking down special teams. So thanks, guys. I know it's a lot to cut with that coming covered this week.
Thanks for having us, Jackie.
Happy to do it.
All right. And obviously, if you like what you're hearing, make sure you subscribe to our podcast wherever you listen to your shows. And obviously, if you want, just leave a review and rate us on Apple and Spotify. So for Greg, Preston, I'm Jacquie Franciulli, and I hope you have a great rest of your week.